The following is a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
Welcome to Cartoon Fun, it's Cartoonerific. Yeah! It's Cartoonerific. Cartoonerific. It's Cartoonerific. With your host, Brian Mitchell.
Well, welcome to the Cartoonerific Podcast, Classic Animated Cartoons. I am Brian Mitchell, and I am your host. You know, just recently I saw something on social media, and somebody posed a question, and they said, who's the greatest animator that ever lived? And they were mentioning Milt Kahl, who was a great animator, and then Chuck Jones, who wasn't really an animator. He was a director. He did a lot of pose drawings, but he was not an animator. And then other people were mentioned. Bill Pete, who was a story guy, who could happen to draw really well, but he was a story guy. He was not an animator. And so, you know, when somebody conflates all these different people that did different job functions and then basically say who was the greatest animator, it's really kind of hard to say because they weren't really animators. Now, story people and directors and designers and layout people, some of those people could also animate. And so, but that doesn't mean they were great animators. It might have been good animators. They may have been great, but it's just the idea that, you know, putting all these different things together and then comparing it doesn't make any sense. An animator's job is very specific, and there are great animators. There are good animators. There are not so great animators. But even among the great animators, you know, they all had their specialties in what they did. Some were really good with comedy. Some were really good with drama and pathos. Some could do really powerful stuff, and some could do, you know, a bunch of different things equally well. But everybody kind of had their place, you know. And, you know, thinking about Ken Harris and Virgil Ross, who are Warner Brothers animators, and then thinking of some of the Disney animators, you know, does that make them not great animators? No, they were really good at what they did. And it's the same thing at Disney. There were some animators that were really good at what they did, but I've never put them together either because it's apples and oranges. You know, they're doing different types of films and stuff like that, but it doesn't make them, you know, better or worse. They're just really good at what they do. So, you know, I don't like getting in the habit of saying, oh, this was the greatest animator that ever lived, you know, and you hear that with Bill Titley, you hear it with Milt Kahl, you hear it with Frank Thomas or Ollie Johnston or any of the Warner's animators, whatever. I think they were all good at what they did. They did it really well. And, you know, it's just good to just appreciate them for what they are. That's just my opinion. Because, you know, I'm a big Ward Kimball fan. Ward Kimball did some very funny animation, but, you know, could Milt Kahl do what he did, or could Ward Kimball do what Milt Kahl did? Maybe, I don't know. But it doesn't really matter in the broad scheme of things. Anyway, I'll just leave it there. To me, good animators are magicians, and they make a character come alive. And they do their thing. They do it really well. So anyway, part 2 with Mr. Scott T. Petersen is coming up right now. We're not going to do any stuff in between. We're just going to go right to it. We had a wonderful talk with him last week. We're continuing that talk this week. So let's go right to it, shall we? Here is Scott T. Petersen, part 2. Amazing time, but maybe also not so amazing a few years after that, I would say.
Very true.
Yeah.
I always like to say I started at the top. Then I worked my way down in my career.
No, come on.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean, is
Right.
I would love to work like on a show again, like Iron Giant, now that I'm a seasoned professional,
Right.
Instead of my very, very first one, even
Yeah.
though there were great things about that being some of my first films.
Right. Well, that's good. That's good. Okay, so you went with Warner's, and you're working on Space Jam, or
Yeah, actually,
when?
that
What
was
year? What
me
year?
then
What year?
that was 95.
Okay.
And they were doing Space Jam somewhere else at Warner's Classics,
Yeah.
but they got in trouble and they couldn't finish it. So they brought on all of the feature animators to work on Space Jam.
Wow.
And I was working on Quest for Camelot at that time, and I was cast kind of on the villain and in a prelude that they eventually scrapped. And that's an interesting story. Oh, Quest for Camelot.
Wow.
That's interesting. You just talked to Michel Gagne, you said.
Yes, I did.
About
Yeah.
some of that. I don't know what you want to know about it, but Quest was really supposed to be their big film.
Right.
That really was supposed to be their the big flower that they were going to present. And man, in the early days, there was some wonderful development work done. It was just great and inspiring. And they had the Croyers there and directing.
Yeah, Bill and Sue. Right.
Bill and Sue. And I really looked up to him. I thought he was wonderful. And I loved everything he'd done. Everything he touched before just seemed to be quality and really good. Kind of reminded me of Duncan.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. Just quality, everything he does.
Right.
And so he kind of became a hero to me, just looking at him and admiring him.
Right.
And I just loved everything he was developing and doing, and he made everybody feel good. And he understood the animator's perspective. And something happened along the way. They did this prelude, like the opening sequence that the Warner Brothers lot. Or I don't know who it was because I wasn't in those meetings or whatever, but they had a disagreement about it. And that whole first prelude was scrapped, and the Croyers were, they either left or they got let go. I don't know what.
Right. We'll assume they left.
I think, it was a falling out because they wanted to do a movie that, because at that time everybody wanted the Princess Disney stuff,
right?
And so I think that's what they were arguing, is that opening sequence. It was really awesome, actually.
Right.
It was really, really awesome.
Right.
And the lot said that it was too dark or something, but it was absolutely no more dark than the opening of Mulan. Do you remember that opening sequence where?
Yeah.
It's the storming of the Great Wall, right?
Right.
That's the first sequence, is that the bad guys stormed the Great Wall. Well, that's exactly what it was in Quest for Camelot. They for some reason just thought it was too dark, and it was just drama. That's all. And then they replaced it with a really bad sequence.
That's
the worst animation of the whole movie they put at the beginning of that show,
hook.
among other problems.
The hook of the show is the worst part of the movie.
Yeah, it's just so bad. Anyways, the Croyers left, and it kind of went downhill from there. But that was the first animation I worked on, was Quest for Camelot, and I did some pretty A scenes for a beginning animator. The villain, he wraps his hands around the hilt of the sword in the stone and lifts it up like this off the ground, sword and all, and then drops it. And that was CG integrated as well, so I got a taste of that.
Right.
I got some really great scenes to do with the villain in the beginning, and then that was scrapped.
Holy moly! There you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I dipped my foot into those disappointments early on,
right.
And so now it doesn't faze me so much. Like the latest thing that's happened is the movie that I worked on. The Coyote versus Acme got scrapped. Heard that? Yeah. They even finished the whole thing.
They finished it. And
people will say, "Don't you feel bad?" And I'm like, that's the way it is.
That's the way it is.
They paid me. At least they paid me.
Yeah, at least you got that. But but it's kind of crazy. They're greenlighting the movie. They're looking at it along the way. The movie is finished. The filmmakers are happy, and then they show it to Warner Brothers, and they go, "Nah, you know.
Yeah. Well, you heard it's
Yeah.
more about the tax, the $30 million tax write-off.
Yeah.
But it's just that I don't even comprehend. So
It doesn't make any sense to me.
no, it doesn't make any
Every
sense.
movie, you make a slate of movies for the year, and it's almost like you're trying to win the lotto, you know. So you buy a bunch of tickets, and let's say it's like okay, you buy 10 tickets. One of them is going to be the winner, at least one.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get 2 or 3.
Right.
They just take one right out of the running instead of giving it a shot. It's like, we're going to get back 30 million, but you spent 80 million. Well, that's okay. We need the tax write-off, so we'll take the 30 million. It's
I know.
I
don't understand it.
It's a numbers game.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
Yeah.
I don't even think that way, so I'm not even going to try.
No, don't.
So, you interviewed some of my coworkers there, Jennifer Klein.
That's right.
Yeah, I started with her there that same week. She was like a week before me.
She's wonderful. She's really wonderful.
Oh, yeah. She is great.
Her and her husband are wonderful people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember him bringing flowers over before they in their courtship.
before they got hitched.
Before they got hitched, yeah.
Wow.
And then Michel Gagne, one of the best effects artists in the business. My very first job, I roomed with him and Mike, I forgot his name. He has a mohawk and but we all roomed together there, and they were very inspiring. He's just an amazing artist.
Yeah. Yeah. So, he is. He's incredible. He's really incredible. And some of the stuff he's done over the years, it's like, I told him with Iron Giant, and you worked on that, right? I
did. Yes.
The scene where the robot can fly.
Yeah.
And there's an exhilaration to that scene. There's a build to that scene. My jaw dropped. Okay. And I was telling him, that doesn't happen. I don't lose control of my jaw. It just, I was just like, huh?
Yeah.
Not making the noise. Sorry. But, no, I was just, I was like, wow, it was really a wonderful moment in that movie. Yeah. And it's such a great movie. It doesn't get the love that it needs, or it deserves. Yeah. How did that happen with getting on from? Because I know
some people didn't. Yeah.
Some people didn't get on it.
Well, that was a transition after Quest for Camelot.
Right.
When people's contracts were up, some didn't get renewed.
Wow.
So Brad Bird and his team, he had to decide who to bring over and who not. So I felt very lucky.
Right.
To be on it.
Yeah. So what did you did they assign you to a character on that, or were you doing any development stuff on it, or?
No development work.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing is after Quest for Camelot, we were sitting for a while and they didn't have scenes for us to do.
Right.
So they took some of us, and I was one of the, I think, 3 animators who they offered to DreamWorks for 3 months or 3 or 4 months to help them with Prince of Egypt.
Wow. Did you have to leave the facility, or they brought the work to you?
No, I went to DreamWorks every day for work, but my paycheck came from Warner Brothers.
Wow.
Have you ever heard of that happening ever in the history of entertainment?
Yes, it has.
Oh, that's incredible that they would just say, "Hey, our guys are sitting around. Do you need some help?" And I would imagine they maybe paid, that DreamWorks paid them. Yeah. But my paycheck still came from Warner Brothers.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, I think it happened at Bluth.
Oh.
And I don't know if it was Rover Dangerfield that they were doing work on. They were doing work on some other movie. And so they were getting paid from Bluth, but they were working on a different picture. But I think they were working in-house, so I don't think they went over there. I think they brought the work in and they worked under their supervision. Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, I came back and worked on Iron Giant.
Right.
And Brad, you can't give enough praise to Brad.
Yeah.
His mind, you see the style and everything he does. It's very smart.
Right.
From Incredibles to Ratatouille, the scripting and the humor, it's very Brad. Right. You can tell.
Yeah.
He has a style for sure.
Right.
And I there's a lot of innovative things he did on that show. He
Mm-hmm.
took what he had and did the best with it.
Right.
So he doesn't gripe about what he doesn't have or beg for things he doesn't have. He took what he had and did the best with it, whether it was us young animators
Mm-hmm.
or whether it was the budget.
Right.
And then he made something great. Because sometimes if you notice in filmmakers, whether it's Spielberg or whoever, when they're given everything they want, Adam Sandler's one of those, like our Eight Crazy Nights that I worked on.
Right.
You give them anything they want without any restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they don't do the best work.
Yeah.
You know, they need somebody to kind of pull them back or to, keep them grounded or something.
If they're unrestricted or restricted?
Unrestricted.
Yeah.
When they're given restrictions, that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make a worse film.
Right.
In fact, sometimes it's probably better because you edit, you go for raw. You really. I mean, I've found that a lot too.
It's true.
Yeah.
No, it's absolutely true. I think if somebody says, "Look, here's $5 million, you're not getting any more," or $6 million, like Bluth with Secret of Nim.
Yeah.
And they promised them $6.5 million. They finished it under budget. I think it came in at 6.2, right?
Yeah.
But when you have those parameters, you work, I think, a little bit more creative, and you try
there you
go. You're trying to make the best of what you got.
Yes.
And I think you end up with something that is probably much better than if the budget was like,
Yeah.
here's the money, but if you need 10 million more, we can get that for you.
It's a balance.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that if somebody, takes it with that attitude like Brad does,
Mm-hmm.
he'll make something great out of it.
Yeah.
And he doesn't need extra,
Right.
And sometimes you just make it worse. But Brad, he made you. I remember him pitching Ray Gun before he got onto Iron Giant.
Right.
They had pitch sessions,
Mm-hmm.
and they let us all go. And they were doing things like The Jester with Jim Carrey. They had another project called Redbeard.
Yeah.
Redbeard was an amazing pitch.
Yeah.
I loved that pitch. And then Brad Bird had Ray Gun.
Right.
And I went in there and he pitched like you were the most important person in the room.
Yeah.
If you walked in, he just had this quality of making you feel important, that he was with you. He was doing it for you.
Right.
And that's how he won it over. I think he's got that ability.
Yeah.
So whenever he did Iron Giant, I'll bet that's exactly, the feeling that they got. They trusted him. And, but man, Ray Gun was a wonderful pitch.
Yeah.
He's really good at that.
I heard Walt Disney was the same way when he was like in a room, he'd come in and
who was
Walt Disney.
Yeah.
I heard he was the same way, basically if he's coming in, he's trying to pitch something to you. People were in awe of him, but he would make you feel that
he made me feel like a producer.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't say yes, sir, and all this, but he just made you feel that way.
Yeah.
And I must have been a very young snot-nosed kid, but he made me feel like I was the president of Warner Brothers.
Right. Wow.
When he pitched it. And there was a handful of us, 5, and then it would rotate and things like that.
Yeah.
So, that's a good little lesson, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But Brad also, you probably heard this before, we'd be in animation dailies as a group.
Yes.
And not individual.
Mm-hmm.
Some people try to protect the animators and stuff, but he just wanted everybody to hear it all.
Yeah.
So it would, and he'd go and it'd be projected up on the whiteboard, a scene. And I thought what he did with scene design was really amazing.
Yeah.
He would make corrections on a frame for like how film should be designed. And he just had a real expertise about that.
Right.
What I loved also was that he cared about making the best film possible, no matter how it came or from who it came, like suggestion wise. I remember sitting in a session with him and he was kind of stumped on a solution.
Right.
And there was a long pause and he looked back at everybody and goes, "Come on, guys, give me some suggestions here."
Yeah.
In other words, he didn't care if it came from the janitor in the corner.
Right.
He just wanted to come up with the best solution for the movie.
Yeah.
He
That's
didn't
rare.
have that ego powering over somebody
Yeah.
because that's my idea. I heard the same thing when when I was at CalArts, the writers of Aladdin came and they said, and they write in teams, and they said, or as a couple, and they go, we treat ideas like we're the lawyer for their idea. So in other words, we don't get offended if we argue it like we're lawyers for the idea, and
Right.
the best idea will win. It's
Right.
not the best person
Right.
or the smartest person. It's okay. I will hop on this idea and defend it until it's not defendable anymore.
Right.
And so, what a great quality
It really is.
to have.
And what I was trying to say before, it's rare. It's really rare that you get a director that is willing, he's open to ideas, you know. But the thing is with that guy, he also knows what's good, what's the cream of that,
Sure. You still have to control things. You still have to have opinion. You have to direct the ship.
Right, right.
And you also have to say no sometimes, I'm sure. So
yeah. Well, Chuck Jones supposedly had they would have idea sessions.
Yeah.
And at Warner Brothers, and all these guys would sit in a room, and the number one rule was that you can't say no. And the whole idea was that if a good idea arose, then basically that would just get so much enthusiasm around it that would win. Yeah. But you couldn't say no. Yeah. I thought that was really a great idea.
Yeah, it's a good technique.
Yeah. Because if it's a bad idea, it's just not going to get any energy. People are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like a group like that. When I was on Green Eggs and Ham with T. Dan and Franz Vischer.
T. Dan was my directing animator, I believe.
Oh, was he really?
I had a lot of them.
I think we could talk for 5 hours. You know that? All these connections. Yeah. But it seemed I remember taking in a drawing to them and saying, because I had to come up with this creature, right? And that's hard sometimes to just come up with something out of nowhere. So I come and bring it to T. Dan. He comes and does a drawing, and it's still not there. Franz tries something, still not there. I go over that, still not there. But eventually, between all of us, we came up with something almost one of the drawings I'm mostly proud of, right? These days.
Right.
And I couldn't have done it both myself, and they could not have done it without me. And so if you have an environment where, we build off each other and not tear each other down, even if something's not, I don't know.
Right.
It's just a good way to work. Bottom line, great project. Good to work with Brad Bird.
Yeah.
And Tony Fuccelli was a great influence.
I worked with him on Fern Gully. Tony
Did
Fuccelli.
You?
Yeah.
Do you know, after Iron Giant, a lot of our team went on to work on Adam Sandler's 8 Crazy Nights.
Right.
And the director was like, why does everybody draw with this line, this like little scratchy line? It's like chick, 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 chick. And that all came from Tony's influence because he do his drive. And we started all drawing that way.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Who was the director on 8 Crazy Nights?
8 Crazy Nights, it was Seth Kersley.
Okay.
But it really, the influence was really great from Adam Sandler. Like he didn't have Seth did a great job. I like with what he had.
Yeah.
But Adam's, it was his film for sure.
Wow. Yeah. Well,
his influence.
He's really a talented guy. Adam Sandler.
It's no fluke that he's successful.
No.
Because I remember at the time people were still thinking that he's just this goofy fluke kind of, that he acts like an idiot and it's not going to last. But I saw more when he would come and we would show him work and things and just the things he would say.
Yeah.
I could just tell he had a lot of talent.
He has a cartoon sensibility to some of his films, even with the cutting of some of that stuff. And I don't know. I like Adam Sandler's work. So.
I was a big fan. I love Waterboy. Is one of those.
It's hysterical. It's great.
It's so good.
Yeah, that's a cartoon. Some of that stuff.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's completely a cartoon.
Yeah. but that's great.
But it's my opinion about Eight Crazy Nights was that, he just needed to be reined in.
Yeah.
Because I think it would have been an absolute classic had he reined it in, for more mass audience appeal.
Right. It was Gendy with Adam Sandler for Hotel Transylvania.
Yes.
And that thing was great. I thought it was great and cartoony.
There's nothing offensive there or crossing the line, but I think in Eight Crazy Nights, people were like, whoa, because they associated traditional animation with a little bit different content. And I think that hurt it.
Right.
But I mean, like everything I do, though, I was really grateful to be working and just put everything I had into making my scenes good.
Well, that's great. Do you have a favorite scene from Eight Crazy Nights?
Okay, yeah, I guess I do. I like to share my roughs of the subtle animation he's talking to himself while he's singing in the car. And because my roughs, I really feel I put a lot into that acting,
right.
The facial expressions in a very subtle way.
Right.
In Cleanup, they just destroyed the subtleties. They just put the kind of the mask of him on.
Yeah.
But I love to share that. I'm proud of that stuff.
Have you ever had an in-betweener, like totally, like maybe it was a new person that really didn't, they were too green. They didn't know what they were doing, and you got the scene back, and it was just like you're looking at it in test, and it's like the timing is all wrong. What you put down on your charts, and I have to explain this to the audience. When an animator does their key drawings, they might do a couple of breakdowns in there, which kind of flesh it out. But there are timing charts that the animator puts down. It's basically how fast you're indicating to your assistant how fast you want the character to come out of a drawing or go into a drawing, or maybe you want it very slow, even timing, which a lot of people don't do. But there are some cases where it's necessary. And if an in-betweener doesn't understand the charts, it can totally change the timing of the animation and really destroy it. It could ruin an effect, especially if you want a real good, like a character's punching something, is punching another character in the face. And if they don't understand the timing charts, it can get mushy, or it could just, it could, instead of hitting with a pow, it kind of hits with like a mush.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what happened because, and I had to learn early on too, that they aren't going to the cleanup people. They're not going to, if it's not on the main pose chart, they're not going to find it. They're not, if I do something subtle in between that, they're not going to find it and do it. Cause all they have is two keys and a chart. And if it's not extra information there, it'll be lost. Yeah. But what happened here, it's more of just that old thing of, this is not exactly on model, because micro expressions are a real thing, and sometimes they're off model. Yeah. And so if you're moving through expressions and you do a quick micro expression and somebody thinks, that's off model, and then they just bring it back on model, well, the animation's lost. Yeah, it's done. Okay. It's toast. So, and I've never heard anybody talk about it that way, but it's a thing. It's a real thing. Yeah. And that's why it's animators value a good assistant. Yeah. Because if they really understand what you're trying to do, then they an know. Animator's assistant has to be an animator. Yeah. And often and by the way, good. It sounds like you've been really spoiled. I have never had an animation assistant, hardly, except at Duncan Studios, because he knows the system better. Yeah. That's the first time I had an animation assistant. So I've had to do it the hard way for a long time. Yeah, no, I just had I didn't have an assistant. A scene was given to a guy that should not have been hired. Oh, yeah. And had no experience. I had no understanding of anything. So he, in between the scene, and it just came out looking like crap. And I was like, I looked at it, I was like, what? Looking at a video test of this stuff. And I'm like, what the hell happened? The guy destroyed the scene.
And I had to go back and I had to look at the stuff, and I was like, oh man, I put the drawings on pegs, I'm flipping it, I'm like, oh God.
Yeah,
So I had to go back to the head of In Between and explain to her, yeah, this is really messed up.
Yeah.
So, but but we got it fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
So
didn't, yeah.
on 8 Crazy Nights, that was the only time where I was mingled with stars. The other films I ever worked on, they do their voices
Right.
way ahead, and then whether it be Space Jam, I don't know how many times people have asked me, so did you meet Michael Jordan? And we did our animation about a year after they filmed the live action. But
Right.
on 8 Crazy Nights, there were stars coming in all day.
Wow.
Every day, and his main friend was in charge of our project. He's in a lot of his movies.
Uh-huh.
Alan Covert.
Oh, okay.
A side guy, but he's in all of his movies.
Right.
And there was one day, it was the holiday Christmas party.
Mm-hmm.
They just surprised us once. They rented a bowling alley. And one day after work, this one guy comes up to me and he goes, one of his assistants, he goes, "Hey, Scott, we're going to have a holiday party tomorrow night." And I said, "Oh, that sounds good. Maybe I'll come." And he comes in closer and he says, "No, you really want to be to this one." And I said, "Oh, really?" So he was really hinting to me. And so when I got there, I just couldn't believe it. He did, or I should say he rented a whole bowling alley. Right. And I mean, Sugar Ray, the musician, was there, right. Lucy Lawless and all of his friends, David Spade, Kevin Nealon, right. You name it. They were all there. Wow. And it was just so casual. Wow. That's the only time that's ever happened to me, right. working in the industry, except just walking along. Yeah. I've seen Kevin Costner and all these different stars just walking around along, the lot streets.
Yeah.
But
when I worked for Bluth, we had, I think it was we were at I guess it was a Hollywood Christmas parade, and we had a float in for All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Oh.
So they put us in some place. I forgot. It almost felt like a back alley type thing with a bunch of tables set up for us. And so I was sitting at
outside.
No, it was inside somewhere. Oh, okay. It was, I don't
a back
remember
room.
A back room area. But anyway, I'm sitting at this table, and it took me maybe I'm sitting down and I'm kind of looking at the people around me, and the person across the way was, I don't know if you remember him, Charles Nelson Riley. He was sitting at he was sitting at the table, an awfully shy guy, but he did a lot of the Bluth voices for, his normally nervous type characters, but he was on Broadway. He used to be in the Match Game. I don't know if you remember the old Match Game with Gene Rayburn and stuff. He was one of the guys up there. But anyway, he was sitting across the table from me. And, and that's probably the biggest, other than maybe Robert Townsend.
Oh, yes.
Who was at the wrap party for probably the same picture, All Dogs Go to Heaven. I think it was, and we had that at MGM or whatever. So
yeah, those are fun. I just love to be around it. Walking around the Warner Brothers lot is one of my favorite things at lunchtime.
Yeah. No, it's a wonderful lot because that looks familiar. That looks,
Yeah.
And the original Warner Brothers animation building is still on the lot, but I think it's occupied by it's probably a live action group in there now and stuff.
Probably.
So, yeah, it's on California Street. So.
Oh.
Anyway, when you finished up on 8 Crazy Nights, was that when you were starting to work on? Maybe it's much later. Well, Mary Poppins Returns happened in what, the 2000?
Way later.
2010s maybe?
Yeah, so after 8 Crazy Nights, that's about when 9/11 was going. The day I turned in my final scene, the day after was 9/11.
Wow.
And that started for a few months. And, one of the advices I got from Tony Fuccelli on Iron Giant, because many of us animators, young animators, asked him advice.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, there's three things. And I can't remember all of the three things, but the one thing he said as advice was never turn a scene in until you're happy with it. And, 100% principle. You don't, you put everything into what, no matter if it's a little scene or a big scene.
Right.
And he says, then you're going to be noticed, basically.
Right.
And I took that with me to 8 Crazy Nights, because a lot of people hated working on it because they came from Disney.
Right.
Florida was just shutting down, and we got a lot of those guys, and they didn't last very long because they're used to a fluffy work situation.
Yeah.
But they demanded a lot of footage,
Mhm.
and but I just dug in and did my best I could, because I didn't think I did that at Warner Brothers, my first job, because I thought I'd be there forever.
Yeah.
And that was my first job. I was like, I'm going to be doing this the rest of my life.
Yeah. And little did you know.
That did I know. And that I find out
Mhm.
throughout, there's stints, and then you're out of work, and so and that's just part of the industry.
It is.
But I did notice that it does matter. You put in 100% and your reputation follows you.
Yeah.
And so after 8 Crazy Nights, a lot of people went to Disney Toons.
Right.
Some of the leaders did, and then they brought me with them. And so I worked on Piglet's Big Movie from there.
Did you do? Were you animating over there?
In Japan.
You went to Japan?
For 6 months. They sent me to Japan.
Holy moly!
To me, that was like being in heaven, because I was told to go to Japan.
Yeah.
And I wasn't married, so that was easier, to be there.
Right.
And they sent me with Alex Williams, who's a great animator, the son of Dick Williams.
Right.
And so it was a great little connection to have.
Right.
And Emil Simeonov and Andreas Wesselhorn and Teresa Wiseman. We all went over there and had the time of our lives. Wow. I just loved being there and seeing that culture, and being with all of them were some of my best memories. At lunchtime, we'd go to a new restaurant and have some great discussions. I just loved it.
I know we're talking about the Japan Disney thing, but
yes,
what was your footage quota on 8 Crazy Nights? 8 Crazy Nights, yes.
Yeah, it was. So at Disney, it's usually about 5 feet, right? 5 feet a week. At 8 Crazy Nights, it was 8 to 10.
Wow. Okay.
So about double.
Wow.
And they really pushed for that. But I made a list of people that were either hired or quit or fired and quit. It was about 50 people.
Wow.
That came and went because of just different things. But that was 8 crazy months.
Well, at least you have some good memories of it. And
I have great memories because the way I looked at it, and instead of buckling under, I tried to thrive, and that's what happened.
Right. How long were you over in Disney Japan?
6 months, and then came back, and sporadically for the next 3 or 4 years was on anything with the number 2 on it. Dumbo 2, Tarzan 2. They did so many sequels at that time. It was crazy. And when Pixar merged and John Lasseter came over, he pretty much got rid of all 2D animation.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's when I found myself really out of work. But I was eventually sent on Kronk's New Groove to the Philippines.
Wow.
And that's where I met my wife, and I supervised a lot of shows. I was there for 4 years.
Wow. Wow, you're an international man.
I never set out to be. It just happened that way. I don't know. People, around me and our friends, some of our friends, they take off time and they go to all these vacations. And I'm like, I'm not like that. But I go because out of necessity. I've kind of been lucky that way. That.
What's the most favorite place that you lived at where you've had to go international?
I love Japan. I thought that was great. That was really fun. And Japan and the Philippines, 2 opposite places. Yeah. I mean, Japan is very respectful and strict and refined. Right. Philippines is more family oriented and, hey, and they're both great. Yeah. They're just opposite. Right. And the one example I like to share is when you go up the escalators in Japan, Everybody's on the right side to let people up
Right.
that want to go faster.
Uh-huh.
In the Philippines, it's just this big,
Right.
like ants, in the bottom, they're all crowded.
Interesting. Right.
But it's a community I love.
Right.
Philippines. Well, loved working with the people there. And the great thing about working with the animators there and supervising there was they speak English.
Yeah.
And they grew up on our films.
Right.
So they know kind of the acting sensibilities.
You're talking about the Philippines or Japan?
Philippines.
Yeah. Okay.
Japan had great talent and
Right.
stuff, but the language barrier was a little hard.
Yeah. A little different. Plus I guess the cultures are way different,
Way different.
Yeah. Okay. So in the Philippines, how long were you there?
4 years.
You said
Almost 4 years.
Okay. So I guess I'm going brain dead because you said that before. So what happened after that? You're working there. And what were you working on over there?
Over there, Kronk's New Groove is what brought me there.
Right.
And so I worked on Kronk's New Groove for a while, and that was just a troubled production. They were not sending over very good work,
right,
at a certain point. And so
you're talking about the story work on that, or the
no, they didn't do the story. It's just all production.
Right.
So the animation that they were sending over was less than feature, by a long ways,
right.
And they kept giving them more money. And more money, but it didn't change anything.
Right.
So, and that's the first thing I noticed. I was telling, the higher ups, well, that's not in order to get feature animation, you have to change the way they do things.
The culture.
They're going to do. I mean, all they've been doing was television animation for years and years and years and years, Hanna-Barbera stuff.
Right.
And so if you give them more money, they're just going to, that's good,
right.
But it's not going to improve so they sent me there to be there face to face. And Dave Block was in charge. He worked on the original Emperor's New Groove.
Right. He was there?
And he was on the show.
Okay.
Kronk's New Groove. And he's somebody who loves feature animation and knows what it takes to get it.
Yeah.
And so he hired me along with the producer and director. They decided to hire me and send me over to the Philippines to be their supervisor there,
right.
Like to work with everybody. Right. And what caught the producer's eye was that I taught at CalArts and that I, have that teaching experience. So they sent me over there.
When did you teach at CalArts? I know we're all over the place, but
I know, aren't we? I'm so sorry.
No. It's great. It's great. But I know if I don't ask you right now, somewhere down the line, it'll go away.
I started at CalArts because of Mike Wing was teaching there. He's a great animator I worked with on Iron Giant. And while on Iron Giant, he asked me, he said, "Do you want to work at CalArts, be an animation teacher?" And I said, no, I'm not interested in that. All I want to do is just animate.
Right.
But he came back a second time or a third time, whatever. And then I agreed to it. And then I worked there for a couple of years before I had to go to Japan.
Right. Did you enjoy it?
Teaching at CalArts, I did.
Yeah.
I did. I think my favorite job teaching was at BYU doing figure drawing, though, because I kind of skipped it in college, even though having the best feature or best figure drawing teacher, Glenn Vilpu,
right?
It just never came natural to me. I was always the renderer and the wanting to do it perfect from the beginning, and so it was hard for me over time. But when I became a teacher of figure drawing, it really loosened me up and helped me to learn it well. And I went back to those lessons that Glenn taught us and handed out the handouts and so forth and the videos, and that's what I started teaching, and it helped my own work a lot.
Wow, very neat.
So the teaching experience really did help my work.
Yeah. And how many years you said you were there doing that?
At CalArts, I was there 2 years.
Right.
And then at BYU, it was a year and a half before I started my own company and got a job we're going everywhere, but it took me to Mexico for a little bit.
Oh, wow.
I know.
What, Mexico City? Or
at Mexico City, yeah.
Wow. What were you doing in Mexico City?
Okay. I did start my own company after the Philippines. Came here to do it.
Okay.
And we got our first job from a company that was doing a feature film about the Mexican Revolution.
Oh.
And so
Was it
that's
was it
what
a
I
good
was doing.
budget?
No, but it was. We were desperate,
Yeah.
and that's a whole story of um, the don'ts of business and the do's.
Yeah.
So uh, it was a disaster in some ways, in that we made a decent contract, and I put together a lot of the people I trained from the Philippines. I started my company by organizing a group there, and we had a physical company in the Philippines, and then people here in the U.S.
Yeah.
And that hybrid is how I put together a production team.
Oh.
And I still stand by that this day. I mean, that you can keep costs down that way, but keep the quality up.
Right.
I still, if I get, projects, that's still my philosophy is you mix and match that way. And then you cast really good. But we were doing that feature film for them, and we did about 60 minutes of animation for a very low price.
Wow.
But they ended up after we delivered, they ended up owing us about $200,000, and then they never paid.
Oh God.
And we had no contract. I wasn't very smart in holding back because he kept begging for it. Yeah, if you just give it to us, then we'll release the film. We'll get the money and all of this, and it just never panned out that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yikes.
So that was one of the disasters of my early business life, and I learned a lot of lessons, though. The things that I'll never do again.
Yeah.
Mistakes.
Yeah. When somebody lowballs you on a price, and then they're not paying you, that's very painful.
That was one of the most painful. I think from my hair went from here to here, like from the low on my head to now I've got a high forehead.
Yeah, it's
and gray hairs
thinning out
so
10 or 20 years faster. You know. Yeah.
I mean, we really did have about 200 artists, and we paid everybody, but we kept going for months to try and keep building our company, and that was just painful to have to let people go.
Yeah.
And so we can't keep going. And it was because we never got paid. I mean, that would have, took us into another year for sure, with a lot of people doing our own projects and stuff. So
yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
It's painful, but that's life. And you gotta, again, you go through it, and it makes you stronger, or it tears you down.
Yeah. Well, it's how you approach it. Everything is how you approach the stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. So what happened after that? Okay, so you did that. Company goes bust.
Well, the company doesn't go bust,
right?
Because we kept going, just a smaller core group.
Okay.
And I couldn't get any. That was the time when everything was CG. Everything. Nobody wanted to do any hand drawn, basically.
Right.
And so it was really hard. We didn't have budget for travel and to make deals, whatever.
Yeah.
But what we did do is I transitioned into smaller things like whiteboard videos and explainer videos, and we got a lot of work for that.
Well, that's good.
And that kept us alive and kept me going until, like I told you, the technology of the equipment we used and the software came back around, and then 2D animation came back digitally.
Yeah.
And a lot of projects started coming in, even me as an animator, like the Mary Poppins Returns. That is the highlight of my career. I just loved working for Ken Duncan.
Right.
I felt like I was working with the big boys then.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like, going to work with them, the people that really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Ken is
tremendous. I'm sorry. Ken is tremendously talented. He's an amazing guy.
He is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he knows talent.
That's, I think, his talent is he brings the right people together to get the project done, and he does CG and hand drawn, and he welcomes everything.
Yeah. What did you work on? How did that come about with Mary Poppins Returns? Did he just contact you, or?
Yeah, it was kind of like that. He hires by word of mouth too. If he knows a lot of people, so he can bring in whatever, what talent he wants, who's available. But me, he didn't know.
Right.
So I was suggested to him by another animator who I worked with, who worked for my company for a while, and then went over to his to work.
Mhm.
And then I was recommended. I sent him my work, and then he hired me right then.
Wow.
And I said, I can't come because he needed him immediately. I had to just pick up and go. And he didn't want me to work remote. He wanted me to be there.
Right.
That was before COVID, and nobody was really set up before then.
Right.
And it's Pasadena. So I told him, I said, I really want to work on it, but I can't go for another month because I had a project for Golden Street Animation, which is my company,
Right.
that I had to finish.
Okay.
You know, I was responsible for it, and I couldn't get off.
Right.
And he goes, he had enough vision and knew what he wanted to say and valued me enough to say, all right, let's keep talking. And so, and that was an email. And then we called, and he decided, okay, I can wait 1 month. And
Right.
so because of that,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to be brought on. And it takes vision to do that.
Yeah.
You know, instead of people being so hard, he didn't. He was very welcoming and made me feel valued and say, yeah, we'll wait for you for a month.
Where were you were you still in Los Angeles at the time, or you had...
No, I had been after the Philippines. I came back to Utah because not only do I have family here, but it's cheaper,
Right.
to run things. And that's
Sure.
how we took our savings and we built the company from that.
Wow.
And so, so we were here. So I had to move for about 7 months to Pasadena, which is a beautiful city. I'd never even been there before.
Yeah. No, it is beautiful.
Yeah, just absolutely beautiful.
Wow.
So just the highlight of my career to work on those classic characters. And there's so many talented people in his studio.
Yeah.
That's where I met Franz Vischer and Tony Bancroft and Jared Beckstrand, I'd known for a long time. And then Sandro Cluso I'd never met before.
Right.
Then all did beautiful work. And
Yeah.
I'd worked with Chris Solve already on The Iron Giant.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What was the favorite thing that you did on Mary Poppins Returns? The favorite scene?
Yeah, I was the last person on, and so I got put on the finale with all the animals. They were coming down the stairs with Mary Poppins.
Right.
Not everybody's favorite thing to do because there are 20 of those animals in every single scene. To Ken's credit, he said, I don't want this just to be the worst animation just because there's 20 people. He wanted even that to be good and individualized.
Yeah.
That takes somebody who loves animation and cares about quality.
Yeah.
So he really wanted that whole thing to be really good quality, not even though it was a crowd, basically.
Right. So we're talking about the dance scene.
The dance scene down the stairs.
Right.
That's what I did. I worked on that whole thing. It was about 4 of us who did that.
It looked great.
Thank you.
It looked great. I think Bill Waldman worked on that too.
He did. Yeah. Oh, I didn't mention Bill.
Yeah.
That's where I met Bill too. I love Bill.
Yeah. Bill actually, we shared an office, right? Shared an office with Kevin Johnson.
Okay.
And shared an office with Bill Waldman for a while.
Yeah.
On Troll in Central Park. And
yeah, all of these memories that we're talking about, people probably won't care about, but it's really fun to reminisce with you about it.
I think the people who listen to this podcast are really fascinated by, where we worked and how we worked together and how we approached things, and they don't have to be animators. It's just people that are just fans of this, and I would love this if I had nothing to do with the animation field, just to listen to animators kind of talk about things. It's like that Seinfeld show, comedians in cars getting coffee.
Oh, I love that show. I listened to that during Mary Poppins Returns all day when I listened to the whole season 1 and 2, I think it was, right?
Yeah. While
working on those animals on Mary Poppins.
Yeah. Some very funny episodes on there. And
I know.
Yeah. I enjoy that show. So this is like animators at their desks drinking water. I don't know. I don't know. That's what I got. I got a glass of water over here. So anyway, what are you working on now? Since Mary Poppins, what?
Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay. So after Mary Poppins, I went to Warner Brothers for a long time, 4 years.
Right.
How did that happen? T-Dan brought me on. We'd worked together on several things,
Right.
but he suggested to the producer, and then the producer saw my work and
Hmm.
brought me on.
Right.
Green Eggs and Ham.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever seen that?
I have not seen that. What is it?
You really should see one episode, first season.
Okay.
It is amazing. It looks like hand drawn on paper,
Right.
but it's all digital. Now,
Right.
I hadn't done that before.
Right.
So, again, takes vision to bring somebody on who hasn't done that and then teach them.
Right.
I had the opportunity to switch and learn digital on the Cintiq
Right.
as far as Toon Boom.
Right.
Learn that program.
Uh-huh.
And so through that experience, I was able, well, I mean, mostly I worked on Photoshop at
Right.
first because it was just doing poses. But yeah, I was on there,
Mm-hmm.
Green Eggs and Ham for almost 3 years. The middle of production, pandemic happened. So then
Right.
I moved because I was commuting on weekends. Can you believe that?
Oh, wow.
Because, I didn't know whether to move the family or not because if it's just a short production. So on weekends, I would travel. It's just a 2-hour flight, but
Right.
still, that wasn't that easy to do.
Yeah, it's
And then the
tough.
pandemic happened, and so I was able to just work from home, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
Right.
After that, I was on Animaniacs.
The
new one.
reboot. The reboot.
Yeah.
I worked on the original.
I know. I read that in your bio. That's so great.
Yeah.
I could interview you. I would love to hear your stories.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that one really was special.
Yeah.
And I like, I loved working on the new one. It's just not quite the same feel,
Yeah. There was
little different.
Yeah, we had a group that came from, I worked on Tiny Toons. I went from Bluth to Tiny Toons.
Yeah.
And then I went back to Bluth
Uh-huh.
and then worked on freelance on a lot of different things, but then came back and was working on the end of the Tiny Toons series as a storyboard artist.
Yeah.
Then moved on to Animaniacs, and I did the Yakko's World, Nations of the World, and
Yeah.
posed that all out for everybody because I would do that at times. And then did a lot of the first Warner Brothers episodes and contributed to Pinky and the Brain and some of the other stuff.
Oh, cool.
But we had a really cool group, and we did some really there was wild stuff going on in the hallways and stuff, things that we got in trouble for, but I didn't get fired, So so no, it was
Where
cool.
you guys? Where were you guys at? The Sherman Oaks.
Sherman Oaks
building,
Galleria. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're up on I think we were on 8 and 11. I think we originally were on 8 and they moved us up to 11. And they had this whole stairwell that they created that went up to the executive level.
Yep. That's where Classics was for a while too.
Yeah, exactly. And feature animation was in there, and
that's where I started my first 2 weeks. And then they moved us to Brand Boulevard.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah. And then
then
I worked on the Looney Tunes movies, the 2 of them that they did there at Warner Brothers.
Did you work on the latest one?
I did.
That's with Peter Braungart, right?
Are you talking? Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked on that. That one's still yet to come out.
Yes.
They haven't canned it yet.
They haven't canned it, and they haven't scheduled a date. It's supposed to be this year, maybe.
Oh.
Have you seen it?
In the fall is what I heard.
Have you seen it? You don't have to tell us anything about it because I know it's kind of under.
Okay.
But
I can say this. It's very much like the series, like the styling.
Right.
If you look at the new series, Looney Tunes series on Max, it's very much in that same style because it's the same creators.
Right. Did you enjoy working on that?
I did. Yeah. It didn't do a lot because they weren't ready for production.
Oh, okay.
So I sat around a lot, but I enjoyed working on it. I worked with Bill on that one, Bill Waldman.
Oh wow, yeah. Bill was over there for a while. He was doing other things too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people were let go from Warner Brothers when Discovery took over.
Yeah.
And they just have a different mindset now. T-Dan was there forever.
Yeah.
I was there for 4 years.
Right.
Right now I'm working at a company called Brazen.
Okay.
They're doing, I can't say
you can't
what
say
they're doing, but I can't say yet. It's just a short
Right.
It's a short, I can say that.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool. It's 2D, and it's pretty cool. I can talk about it in a couple months, I think, when it comes out.
Well, maybe we'll come back. We'll revisit that. We'll talk about
Okay.
that. Well,
cool.
look, this has been a great conversation. It's probably going to be a two-parter, I think, on the podcast. So, probably
Where we were all over the place. I'm sorry for that.
No.
Mine's a little like that.
No. I've had, sometimes I'll have a conversation and it doesn't make any sense when you hear it. And then I have to kind of like piece it together, and
yeah, sure.
And we've been able to do that here. But no, this is not all over the place. I think we kind of followed trajectory and I think
career.
Of your career, and it was kind of a interesting back and forth. So I enjoyed talking to you.
You too.
And I have very high hopes that hand-drawn animation will come back in a big way, because I love it. I love good animation. And
there's a lot going on as far as just people doing it.
Yeah. Well, you got Jennifer and Burke Klein doing their Pups of Liberty thing, and then you have
Aaron Blaise.
Aaron Blaise has something, and Michel Gagné is doing a feature on his own, really.
Yeah, I know.
And
he's quite a crazy character that way. I mean, he really bleeds for the art.
Yeah, he does. But I think there are a lot of people out there that are trying to do their best to kind of bring it back in a way that maybe incorporates new stuff, and then but has that look of beautiful hand-drawn animation. So, we cross our fingers. And basically, when I started up the Cartoonerific Studios, that's our goal, is to do new hand-drawn animation. And we've been working on a lot of stuff. And so hopefully we can put it all together and actually show people some of this stuff. Anyway, I want to thank you for doing this, taking the time out. It's been a pleasure. And, let's stay in touch. And
you bet. Pleasure's all mine. Thank you.
Do you have any questions or comments about the podcast? Please email Brian at cartoonerific.com. Your email may be featured in one of our future shows.
Well, thank you, Scott, for coming on the show. It was really appreciated. I really get a lot out of these interviews, and I really enjoyed hearing about how Scott grew up and his interest in cartooning, and then going to school for it, and then his career working in it. I hope everybody out there enjoyed it too. So thank you again, Scott, for that. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Please go to your favorite service that carries the podcast and hit the subscribe button. And then this way, anytime a brand new Cartoonerific news or podcast is uploaded, you'll be notified and you can listen to it. And that would be a great thing. You know what's even better, though? Once you subscribe to a service, please say some good things about us. Give us a little review. It doesn't have to be much, a couple of sentences. You rate us with the stars and stuff. I would really appreciate that. I would hope that you might find the time to do that. It only takes you a few moments, and really help us out, really help support us. So please do that. If you haven't already told a friend, please do so. Let them know about the podcast, especially if you're really enjoying it. Let them know. Say, hey, look, this is a wonderful show. You should really tune into it. So, let them know about it. Or better yet, join our Facebook page and share any of the posts that we have about new shows. You could share that to all your friends on Facebook and make a few comments there and let people know about the Cartoonerific podcast. So that'd be a wonderful thing. Anyway, we have a bunch of really wonderful guests coming up in the weeks ahead, and I know you're really going to enjoy it. If you want to learn who is next week's guest, all you have to do is go on the Cartoonerific News, which is uploaded every Tuesday night. So next Tuesday, we will say on the show, Marjorie will actually say it, she'll say who this week's guest will be. So if you want to find that out, please check that out next Tuesday night. Anyway, I want everybody to have a great evening. I want you to have a great week. And we'll see you all again next time on the Cartoonerific Podcast. See ya.
This has been a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
The Cartoonerific Podcast is copyright 2024 by Cartoonerific Studios Incorporated. All rights reserved.